Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Doom Mixtape. It's been a while, but thanks for sticking with me. I actually have, I guess, a slight announcement that I'll say at the end of the episode, so stick around until then. But in the meantime, this level that we're playing is called Acheron's Needle, and it's by Xaser, who I've talked about multiple times before, and Marcaek, sorry, not I actually had to redo recording because I confused Marcaek and Mechadon, because I played a Mechadon map that kind of looked and felt like this in some ways, but no. Marcaek is a mapper who I've not talked about before, who, I guess to summarize this set is called Syringe, and it was released at the very end of 2019, so it has kind of bittersweet memories for me playing this, because I think this set is just like a perfect, nice little morsel of like each map kind of works, and it's not too difficult, but it's, challenging in its own way. But because it was released at the very end of 2019, and I played it along with some other Doom maps at the beginning of 2020, it's kind of like associated to me with like some of the last things I experienced before, the world descended into darkness. It's like a glimmer of hope before everything got consumed by darkness. And there's a little bit of that actually to this map of, you're restoring a world from being taken over by hell. If only we had optimism that would happen in our reality. But in any case, I haven't played tons of new Doom maps of the last few years. This and what was the name of that set that I played? The one with the nightmare map that I played, the Halloween map. I'll remember the name later. Those are some of the most recent ones that I played, and I haven't really been like playing as much, recent Doom maps outside of playing co-op with a friend. So I don't know, but what I find interesting about this is like, so the people who worked on this set are kind of like, to put it broadly, like part of the, I guess you would call like the Doom Cool Kids Club, the Doom World Cool Kids Club, like. People involved with Doom the way it did and back to Saturn X and stuff. And I think I've been kind of critical a little bit of some of those people before on here, but I think it more just has to do with one or two members of that group being like very dismissive of like, or being very prescriptive about like Doom level design, and kind of dismissive of some of those like Russian maps that I thought were really interesting artistically, and maybe a little reductive in some ways. However, I don't like. I mean, I don't follow the Doom community as much at this point, but I don't feel like I don't feel the same kind of like energy that I felt in 2014, 2015 from that crowd anymore. And I think this set kind of represents like the culmination of this group kind of dominating the past decade, the 2010s, in the Doom community. It's like they kind of started being a force right when Doom the way it did came out in 2010, and kind of in so many ways kind of dominated the sensibility of the decade, I feel like. So it's kind of like a summation of like lessons learned creatively. And I think in general, like, I guess just having, cause this set is called Syringe partly because it's only a few maps, but apparently took a long time to actually finish. But I think what works about it is it's, each map just has a different idea, and it feels kind of refined and, very much what it is. And it feels like this group has learned, you can sort of feel the lessons that they've learned from making these maps. But I would say that this map, which is the last map of the set, kind of represents the culmination of the set. Like this first part, I think is maybe my favorite, because I just love giant scaled sort of this like giant cavernous environment, the giant scale of it. You know, I'm like jumping off of precarious cliffs. There's some cliffs rather. There's some very surreal kind of imagery. You know, you're being teleported around to different areas. There's a little bit of an implied narrative there, but also, you know, the overall like pacing of the combat and whatever works really well. To like, I expected, because this was the last map of a set, and I was playing it on pistol start with ultra violence, that I would have difficulty, but no, I found this map like pretty perfectly balanced. And yeah, there's like a, you know, like kind of a slaughtery segment at the end, but not anything that was unreasonable or, you know, that I couldn't handle with what was provided. So I really I really think that's also and I think that's always been kind of a strength of some of these mappers. They don't tend to be heavier on the kind of, you know, slaughtery combat in general. So this has a good amount of like monsters. It's about the right size of map. It doesn't kind of have the bloat of like the Megawad, which has become kind of like a weird, almost like, I don't know, shibboleth or something. Like the Megawad became such a thing that kind of has like hung over the Doom community in some ways, because this expecting people to make things of such a scale and maintain consistency of quality is just almost impossible. Like, it almost never happens. And and there's this tendency to like, I always have problems with Megawads in that like I don't tend to like later maps very much because they tend to become slaughter maps. And I tend to feel like a lot of Megawads like use up their best ideas sort of like in the early to mid section when the maps are like appropriately scoped. And then, you know, to the end there's this cliche of, oh, everything's got to get more hellish and difficult, and it just becomes such a cliche. So sets like this can really avoid that, which is great. But yeah, oh, and you probably hear sirens because I live in New York City, so I apologize for that on my audio. Anyway, yeah, I would say like I almost like the first section of this map the most, which I was just kind of finishing up now. You can see I've died several times, but again, I didn't practice this map at all before I started recording, and I hadn't played this since it came out. In a way, like I said, it's kind of bittersweet to play this because it's just associated with like, I don't know, like January, February 2020, like right before everything happened. Yeah, I think this is a kind of like it has kind of a similar thing of like a lot of these mappers who are involved, like the way it did and stuff. It's like not trying to go for hyper detail. It's trying to go for like a certain kind of balanced approach to combat that's like you know, keeps like things at a relatively moderate scale but still difficult, like trying to maximize encounters. I don't end up picking that up, which is maybe a mistake, but whatever. And I guess the implied sort of progression narrative here is really like, I guess, what I would call the Xaser side of this map. So many of Xaser's maps, I really associate him with like kind of high concept sort of gimmicks, things that are a little bit surreal, and like this idea of like alien technology. That's a very like Xaser thing. So you get that from this, but you also get like a pretty tight map that doesn't go too crazy, and feels a little loose in a way that works. I admit I don't know Marcaek's maps as well. I played some of the ones in Doom the way it did, but it's difficult to like grasp a particular style in a set like Doom the way it did, or Doom 2 the way it did in particular, because he has several maps there, just because they're going for such a specific thing. But yeah, I mean, I guess this crew sort of represents a phase of the Doom modding community of, you know, the last 10 years or starting in around 2010. That's like, you know, a reaction against maybe this idea of like megawatt bloat and this idea of like, you know, things having lots of features and whatever that are just kind of random and don't really make sense and, you know, aren't balanced in an appropriate way. And this idea of trying to like reverse engineer and understand like what makes the game work, I think is a good impulse, but it can also like lead to being pretty prescriptive. But like I said, I think this group maybe is chilled out a little bit. I mean, I don't sense as much. Admittedly, again, I'm not following the Doom community as much in the last few years. Lost Civilization, by the way, is the other map set that I played in early 2020 that I have bittersweet memories of. But yeah, I don't know. It's just nice when you see people kind of like learning lessons. Like there's something very distinctive, which I think I was starting to see with like, you know, some of those like mayhem sets, or like the joy of mapping, where it's like people kind of got bored of you know, doing default Doom and kind of trying to, you know, distill the pure essence of Doom, and they started adding some interesting new textures or features to kind of just like add a little sprinkling of something that would make the game more interesting, or make the mapping more interesting, without like totally screwing with the formula. And I think this set kind of represents that. Like there's an area that's like, there's one map where you're like in a forest. There's a few different themes. And I feel like the Doom community has just gotten better in general at like providing, you know, texture themes that like really work and feel appropriate to the original game while still feeling like unique. That was the thing that I liked about some of those joy of mapping sets and some of the levels. Is the way that they, you know, were able to kind of provide these texture themes and do something really interesting with it that didn't feel like it totally, you know, fucked with the formula. So yeah, this area is like, there's like a few crushers, and I'm just trying to kind of figure out where I need to go here. This map is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, there's nothing like too crazy that I need to like contextualize. I feel like it pretty much speaks for itself. I mean, I said before, there are a few different sections, and there's like these set of teleporters at the beginning, so I'm in the midst of completing probably the second section. Probably the most interesting thing about this map is it feels like you go back to the beginning of the section and you're repeating it, but every time that you like fall down into the pit, into this like, you know, this needle thing that I jumped down the first couple of times, like it's a different area. So this might be those beginnings might be just a copy of, but an actual different area, or it might have some sort of Xaser thing where like sectors are raising and lowering in a very convoluted way to make the area be completely different. I sort of have a feeling it's the former, just because I don't know how you would do that with the amount of complexity. But yeah, it feels, so there's this kind of like, I guess like dreamy quality, because you're going down what seems like it's the same place, except it's completely different. Like it's a completely different area. So it's a clever use of that. Actually, my friend last night was playing this VR game called The Last Clockwinder, where you like, it's like a puzzle game kind of, but it has this thing where like all the different areas, like it sends, I guess because of technological limitations, it like sends the the one puzzle or sector or whatever that you're like looking at, it sends it down into the abyss and then sends up another one. So this is kind of that effect. It's like you're starting from the same shell, but the actual area that you go into is completely different. So that's cool. And that's something Xaser has done on. There's one particular map that I was thinking of. I think it's a map that I know, like the Alphon Zone, which is, by the way, another set that I feel like embodies this trend of like trying to add a few new features while like maintaining a Doom sensibility. Although I feel like that one goes a little further with the adding new features and stuff. There's an original Xaser map, I can't remember what it's called, where like it just begins and it's all just like a flat plane, and then rooms and stuff pop up as you start walking around. It's a very complicated, convoluted, like tricky sector thing, but it's really cool. And it's kind of it's kind of exposing the underlying mechanisms of like the Doom engine, which is really the cool thing about it. And that's something that Xaser, after so many years of being involved with the Doom community, probably 2 decades now, has just become so good at doing that in various ways. Which is, it's fun and exciting to talk about when you're talking about it in the context of Doom maps, because it's like, the things that you can do are partially a result of the ideas and inspiration of particular artists, but also things are inherently limited by the engine and the tools with which you work in. So I think that's the really cool thing about the Xaser levels, is it really like exposes that in a very like fundamental way. Kind of exposes like the alien technology part of it. Yeah, I'm gonna read from. So this set rather won a CAC award for 2020, even though it was released at the end of 2019. It was released actually in December, like right on Christmas or Christmas Eve. So it's still relatively new, but again, I haven't really like dove deep into new sets since this one in Lost Civilization and in early 2020. Okay. So this is from the CAC Awards. You wake up amongst blood and chaos in a dying universe. It's up to you to bring the demons down and this vast expanse of insanity back to life. Syringe is a set of 7 limit-removing maps containing all types of realms, from the mundane to the insane, from forests to bloody bases to void-esque asteroid fields. That's sort of what we were messing with earlier. This terrain is so vast and filled to the brim with danger at every twist, turn, and dark corner imaginable. The behemoth red towers which watch you closely, unblinking, as you maneuver your way to the heart of all this darkness, to give it the injection this world needs to revive. So I guess the syringe is the thing that tube, the red tube that I was diving down. And you'll see it at the very end as well. Each map tells its own story while telling a much larger and scarier world. The use of almost deconstructive techniques give a sense of reality being bent and crushed around you. The walls becoming bloodier, if the walls are even there. Something I love in, Doom maps in general, this like implied narrative. Obviously that's why I'm such a big fan of alt. This is a bit more, like, I'd say the theme of a lot of Xaser stuff is a bit more about like ancient technology and things like that, whereas something like alt is like this more abstract narrative about, other things. So it's a completely different sensibility, but it's similar sense of like using like techniques of the Doom engine to make something feel surreal, which is already kind of something it's good at doing because it's already something that is so kind of abstract. Nice little blue tunnel here. So yeah, I like any map that you're kind of like, you know, traveling between planes of reality. Like this nice contrast of this blue room in between just the intense red that we've seen for most of this map is very nice. So yeah, now we're back to the start area once again, and this is what I was saying. And you can tell things are a little different. I mean, I think that Soul Sphere, yeah, but also I keep hearing like lifts going up and down, which is why I keep moving back and forth. But it's just for some reason the like windows in this area go up and down. But yeah, you can see this is like the monsters that are here are changing, but that like red tube is the kind of syringe of this whole set that you're dealing with here. So like I said, this map is kind of the culmination. Syringe is the brainchild of 4 titans of the Doom mapping scene. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. Pavera and Tarnsman are a couple others who are involved with this. Marcaek was part of this project called 50 Shades of Grey Tall, which is like famously the worst texture in the Doom engine. They made an entire set around just a few of the worst textures in the Doom engine. But he says he lends his experienced hand to the memorable combat of Acheron's Needle. I like this like tomb area here. It reminds me of Lost Civilization. I'm gonna come back because there's a little secret there too. But you know, I love whenever this happens. Like obviously, you know, you're in for a big like combat arena. Although this is not actually too hard because you can just bypass a lot of these monsters once they've spawned in. But yeah, I'm gonna die here. But I like it whenever they do the sky floor, especially when they have a surreal sort of texture like this one that they use as the skybox. Well, speaking of that, it says, no part of this mapset may be classified as gentle. Indeed, every single map is brimming with dangerous, intense encounters that keep you thinking on your feet. That's true, but again, it's not concerned with like scope and scale necessarily. Like the amount of monsters is not unreasonable. It's trying to get as much as possible out of the encounters. So yeah, that was the Syringe that I just dove through. This is, I think, the 3rd section, maybe the 4th section. But akin to frogs being boiled in a pot of water, it's a strong, steady crescendo. It's essential... Okay, that's a strange metaphor. It's essential to be aware of what's around you at all times in this set, especially among the jagged, floating towers of the later space maps. All this builds up to a quite memorable and intense end map, which is the one I'm playing, forcing the player to move fast on their feet and avoid the already bloody crushers as they warp through time and space, leading to a battle between the great Cyber Demon and Spider Mastermind, which you'll see in a second. But how one wish that was all there was to it. All in all, Syringe is a great injection of new school ideas into old school Doom gameplay. I think that's generally true. Like they're not really changing the core gameplay here. I'm wandering through this kind of tomb area. There's like a secret wall there that had a backpack in there, which was useful. And a fantastic journey to bend the mind and treat the senses. These days, it's a welcome disconnect from reality, even if it's a short but potent dose. Yeah, this was written at the end of 2020, because again, this came out in 2019, but it was at the end of 2019, so it was before, or it was after they would have done the CAC Awards. It's just amazing how much stuff... I mean, this just encapsulates to me like how much reality sort of changed within the span of a few months. And yeah, it's hard not to think about it and feel very bittersweet for me. Well, more than bittersweet, feel kind of depressed. Just this idea of, what the world could be in 2019 versus even a year or two later. I like this at the end. Like, okay, now the textures have gotten all surreal and weird. Like, there's these weird whole like porous kind of gray texture. There, the areas that were, you know, like a pool of something before are now just completely darkened. And there's a death pit there with like where the corpse is being skewered. I'll show you in a second. Yeah, this one has some bonus items in it. And then this one over here, you can walk down in here and it's just a death pit, which is like maybe not great, but given that there's like a skewered corpse there and it's kind of at the end of the last map, I'm not like too... I don't mind that as a decision. But again, it says something like, that's something that, you know, a lot of people would encourage against like ever doing in Doom mappings, like having a death pit or whatever. Maybe there's a way out, I don't know. But in that case, I feel like having a death pit is okay, because it's just kind of apparent like what it is, or at least you can kind of extrapolate. So this is the final jump down into the needle, the syringe, and now we have a couple cyber demons and a couple spider masterminds. Not too hard if you know what you're doing. I mean, it's really easy to die, of course, as it always is with these types of creatures, but as long as you can get them into infight, you'll be good to go. That's not all there is. I do like that texture, that like porous gray rock texture. It's like things have become hollowed out and dried out. I don't know. It's an interesting... Yeah. It's an interesting way to interpret, because so much of Doom is like, oh, there's the normal world and then the hell world with all the, you know, entrails and bloody lava and everything else. And so another way to interpret that is to have like a world that is completely like hollowed out and dried out, like desiccated. Yeah, these guys are taking care of each other, and I'm just admiring the needle and the sky floor here. I always love the sky floor, the little eye guys, or whatever they are, the little encased in green. I don't even know what you call those with the candles. Yeah, it's a good scene. I like describing it as a scene, like you're going to like a dance club or so. You're going to like it's like, oh, this is a crazy scene, you know, sky floor, giant, I don't know, New York City, I guess, can sometimes feel like those giant towers, but less cool and just more depressing and dystopian. Some of those giant, like, luxury towers in New York are ridiculous. Makes me feel like I'm in Blade Runner or Dubai or whatever. It's a joke. Just giant luxury towers that are, like, half empty. So these arch files, I'd say, are much actually harder than, you know, the Cyber Demon and the Spider Mastermind, just because you got to kill them quickly. I suppose you could run past them if you wanted to, because the exit is just around the other corner. But there's also, like, if you choose to, while I'm waiting for this thing to go down, if you choose to, you could go, there's like a teleporter to previous sections of the map. This says reset. But I like how the floor changes here, and it changes to some kind of like, again, it's one of those like more new school, like surreal textures that do a good job of capturing the mood of the game, while also feeling, you know, like a little fresh and different. But yeah, if I choose to go around the other end, I can go back to the previous section of the level, and there's like a nice little teleporter there in case you miss something, because this is the last level after all, and maybe you want to, you know, explore and see if you missed any secrets or anything else, because there's some nice set pieces and stuff, and it's always nice, you know, to let a player admire all the work that you put in, especially if they've ran through it real fast, and you kind of missed some stuff, so that's always nice. I kind of wish I had recorded this in a little slightly higher quality, because I'm definitely seeing some compression artifacting in general with this episode on some of the textures, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, that is the thing that'll send you back to a previous part of the level here. So I'm just trying to take care of these guys. But yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, I don't know, the direction. If this is like a summation of the 2010s and the Doom community, you know, sort of what the 2020s will bring. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't been following as much, so it's I'd be kind of more curious to hear what anybody else thinks. I think there is a complicating, mitigating factor of the fact that, you know, boomer shooters, retro FPS, as I think they should be called, have become, you know, their own kind of commercial category, and there's definitely some overlap with modding scenes there, more so than, you know, any other kind of game development. And I don't know how much that has affected, you know, the composition of either the Doom community or, you know, like, is that kind of taking people away from developing Doom mods into trying to, you know, have their shot at developing a commercial game? Or is it going to be kind of like like most indie development, kind of a really hard to get visibility amongst the many? I think that's one thing that I've been noticing that I've been frustrated about, is like retro FPS games are kind of becoming like Metroidvania, Souls-like Metroidvanias to me. It's like, I'm sure there are some good ones in there, but there are so many. There are so many that are coming out that it's like hard for me to distinguish. I like this little they have just this, like, you know, like sends you back to just like 0 is just the beginning of the map, and this is the first kind of area, and then there's this little arrow there telling you, you know, you can come back here. So that's very cool. They let you admire their work. But yeah, I'd be curious, you know, to see what happens with the Doom community. Like, is that retro FPS thing gonna become a flash in the pan? I don't know. As long as, like, there are people who are interested in doing it, and there's like a, you know, people are still running the websites necessary, I'm sure there'll continually be interest in Doom and Doom mapping. There's definitely been an infusion of interest in Quake mapping too, which is interesting. So this is the last, like, bonus map here. It's just a little it's a little ending map. You can see the needle ascend into heaven as the world returns to normal. If only that had happened. If only that had been our reality. So while I'm watching it do this for the next 2 minutes, I just want to say that because I haven't been playing as much Doom maps in the last, I don't know, year or two, I'm probably going to put Doom Mixtape back on hiatus at the end of the year. I still have a few more maps that I want to play through, but I think I kind of achieved what I wanted to by doing this series, and I have been streaming a lot of different stuff, other games, just in general, like once every week or two. So it would be really nice to maybe think of trying to do some sort of YouTube series where I could play a lot of games that I have in my backlog that I'm kind of interested in exploring. Because I spent, you know, I invested enough money and, like, time into, like, you know, looking into and researching games that it's probably worthwhile to do that. So I will do a handful of more, and at the end of the year there'll be one last final Doom Mixtape episode. And who knows, I might resurrect it again. Like, as I said, I originally started this in 2015. The landscape was kind of different. Like I said, a lot of, like, people in indie games didn't really talk about level design. There wasn't, like, it felt like this community kind of existed in its own space, and things definitely have changed since then. and I don't think it makes this series any less useful or interesting. And I know that some people have really enjoyed these videos as a way to kind of chill and just kind of, I don't know, sort of watch, get some kind of little exposure to the community while they're, that they might not have been exposed to otherwise, and it just enjoys hearing someone talk about it. So I'm glad that people have enjoyed that. Rocketed myself there. But anyway, so yeah, there'll be a last video at the end of the year. There'll be a few more, and then we'll try to do something else. So just let me know what you think about that, and I hope everyone has a great day and a great summer and a great rest of your year.